There is a coffee tin sitting on the shelf above my workbench with about 400 baits in it. I rolled them in March. It is nearly October, and they still catch fish. The whole tin cost me $6. 400 baits. $6. That is about a penny and a half apiece. And I have caught catfish, carp, bluegill, and a great many bass on them from the first warm week of April straight through to the frost. They do not rust. They do not tangle. They do not snag on a rock and cost me $9 and a bad word. When the tin runs low, I make more at the stove in about 40 minutes, out of things already in the cupboard. I have not bought a lure in 31 years. I want to be careful how I say that, because I am not going to tell you lures do not catch fish. They do. What I am telling you is that a wall of lures is built to catch a man standing in an aisle, and the tin on my shelf is built to catch a fish lying on the bottom in 9 feet of stained water at 7 in the evening. Those are two different jobs. Only one of them has your money in it. My grandmother made this recipe on a wood cook stove. Her mother made it before her. It was not a fishing recipe when it started. It was a kitchen recipe that somebody in a hard year figured out would do a second job, and it fed a family through 2 decades when there was nothing to spend on anything in a package. I learned it standing on a stool beside her, and I'm going to hand you the whole of it today, with the amounts, the timing, and the one test she made me do with my thumb before she would let me carry a batch to the water. I'm going to tell you what goes in it, how to roll it, how long to boil it, and how to dry it so it keeps all season in a tin on a shelf. I'm going to tell you the step almost everybody skips, which is the step that decides whether you catch fish or feed minnows. And then I am going to tell you the part that should sit a little uneasy with you, which is that none of this is hidden. It is not lost knowledge. It is printed in old farm papers and extension pamphlets, and has been for 100 years. The tackle industry simply had no reason to bring it up. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will be able to walk into your own kitchen tonight and make a season of bait for the price of a sandwich. The first thing you have to understand is that you have been sold a picture of fishing that belongs to about 1 fish in 10. Go and look at that wall again. Every lure on it is built on one idea, which is that a fish sees something moving, decides it is a wounded minnow, and chases it down. For a fish that hunts that way, it works. A pike hunts that way. A trout in clear moving water hunts that way. But go stand at the edge of the average pond, the average slow river, the average farm lake in the middle of summer, and ask what actually lives down there in numbers. Catfish, carp, bluegill, and every other panfish. Suckers, bullheads. Every one of them makes its living by finding food that is already dead, already still, and already lying on the bottom. That fish does not hunt with its eyes. It hunts with its nose and its tongue. A catfish carries taste buds over its whole body. Well over 100,000 by the count of the people who have studied it. On the barbels, along the flanks, down to the tail. It swims through the water, tasting it the way you would walk through a house smelling supper. A carp can pick up dissolved compounds at parts per billion, a drop in a swimming pool, and she knows. So think what that means for the 2 things in your hand. A lure is a moving question. It passes by, it asks the fish once, and it is gone. A bait is an invitation. It lies there and works the whole time it is down there, and it does not need the fish to see it, because it is sending out a signal in every direction that a fish can follow home from 40 yards away. A lure fishes for 1.5 seconds at a time. My bait fishes for 40 minutes while I sit there doing nothing. So why does a boiled dough bait beat a plain ball of bread or a hunk of hot dog? Because of what happens when you put egg in it and drop it in hot water. When you boil a dough ball for about 90 seconds, the egg protein on the outside sets, and it forms a thin skin, almost like a shell. That skin does 3 things. It holds the bait on the hook through a cast, which plain dough will not do. It keeps the nuisance fish from stripping it off in 30 seconds. Because a bluegill cannot pick apart a hard skin the way it picks apart bread. And then, over the next half hour in the water, that skin softens and begins to leak. The starch swells. The flavor comes through the surface. And the whole bait becomes a slow, steady drip of scent instead of one puff that washes out. That is the whole thing. Anybody can make bait that smells strong. What you want is bait that smells strong for a long time and stays on the hook while it does it. Boiling with egg is how you get both. And it was how you got both long before anybody thought to sell it in a jar. Here is what goes in it. And I want to be plain about the cost, because the number in the title is the real number. 2 cups of cornmeal or semolina, about $1. 1 cup of plain flour, call it 75 cents. 4 eggs, $1.50 at what they cost now. 2 heaping spoonfuls of garlic powder and a small jar will do you 4 seasons, so call it $1 toward this batch. And something sweet, which can be a spoonful of sugar, a spoonful of molasses, or a packet of cheap flavored gelatin from the baking aisle. Under $1. That is $6, and it makes 300 or 400 baits, which is more fishing than most men do in a year. You will notice there is nothing in there you cannot pronounce, and nothing that came out of a chemical plant. That is not me being romantic. That is the point. Every one of those things is food, and a fish knows food. Mix your dry things first. Cornmeal, flour, garlic powder, and your gelatin if you are using it. Stir them together in a bowl with a fork until the color is even all the way through. Then beat your 4 eggs in a cup and pour them in, and work it with your hands. Do not use a spoon for this part. You need to feel it. It will look wrong for the first minute. It will look like wet sand. Keep working it. It comes together all at once, the way pie dough does. If it is still crumbly after 3 minutes, add water a teaspoon at a time, and I mean a teaspoon, because it is easy to go too far and hard to come back. If it goes sticky, dust in more cornmeal. Now, before I give you my grandmother's test, do me one small favor. If this is landing for you so far, tap the like button, and if you have not subscribed, take 3 seconds and do that too, and switch the bell on so the next one finds you. That is the only thing I am going to ask you for today. All right, back to the bowl. Here is my grandmother's test, and she would not let me carry a batch out of that kitchen until it passed. Press your thumb into the ball. If the print stays clean and the dough does not stick to your thumb when you pull away, it is right. If the print fills back in, it is too wet. If the edges crack, it is too dry. Thumb test. She never gave me a number of minutes or a number of cups. She gave me a thing I could feel, and I have used it for 50 years since. Roll it. Pinch off a piece and roll it between your palms. Size matters more than folks think. So here are the 3 I keep in the tin. Pea size for bluegill and panfish. Marble size for carp and eating size channel catfish. And thumbnail size, a good inch across, for the big flatheads and for when the little ones will not leave you alone. Roll all 3. It costs a few minutes, and it means you are ready for whatever is biting. Get a pot of water boiling. Not a rolling boil, a good steady one. Drop the balls in a dozen at a time so you do not crowd the pot. They will sink. Watch them. In about 90 seconds they float, and when they float, they are done. This is where most people go wrong, because it is tempting to leave them in. Do not. A bait boiled 90 seconds has a skin and a soft middle. A bait boiled 4 minutes is hard all the way through. And you have made a little rock that smells like nothing. Lift them out with a slotted spoon onto a dish towel in one layer, not touching. Let them sit somewhere dry and airy for a full day. Not in the sun, not in the oven. What you are doing is pulling the surface moisture out so they will not mold, and it decides whether your tin lasts a season or a week. When they are dry, and they will feel like a hard bread crust, put them in a coffee tin or a jar with the lid on loose and set them on a shelf. They will keep for months. Mine sit in the shed all summer, in the heat, and they are still good in October. And that is where the real value is. You are not making a batch of bait for a trip. You are making a season of bait for a spring afternoon. Now, step 3, and this is the one everybody skips. Step 3 is soaking. Those hard little balls in the tin are dormant. Shelf-stable means, by definition, that they are not doing much of anything. Take one straight from the tin, thread it on a hook, and throw it in, and it will work eventually. But you have wasted the first half hour while it wakes up. So the night before you fish, or even an hour before, take out as many as you plan to use and put them in a small jar. Cover them with water. Or better, cover them with water, and add another spoonful of your garlic powder and a spoonful of the sweet. Put the lid on and let them sit. What happens is that they take that liquid back in, right through the skin, and they carry it into the middle of the bait. Now, instead of a hard ball that has to soak in the lake before it starts talking, you have a loaded bait that begins releasing the moment it hits the bottom. The difference is not small. A dry bait out of the tin starts working in half an hour. A soaked bait starts working in about a minute and a half, and it will outfish the dry one 2-to-1 on a short evening trip. That is the whole trick, and it costs you a jar and a night of doing nothing. That right there is the most useful thing I am going to say today, and almost nobody does it. If it earned its keep, hit the like button and make certain you are subscribed with the bell switched on. It takes 3 seconds, and it is the only reason a fellow talking about a bowl of cornmeal ever gets put in front of anybody. While I am on it, hook them properly. Do not run the hook through the middle and leave the point buried, because you will pull it out of the fish's mouth all evening and blame the bait. Push the hook in from one side all the way through, and turn it so the point sits just under the surface of the skin on the far side. On the marble size and up, I like to push a bit of dough over the eye of the hook and pinch it so nothing slides. If you have a hair rig, or you know how to tie one, that is better still, but you do not need one. My grandmother never tied a hair rig in her life. Now for the honest part, because I am not going to sell you something I have to lie about, and there are 4 things you need to hear. The first is that this does not catch everything. It is very good on catfish, on carp, on bluegill and other panfish, and good on bass by way of the food chain, because a bank lined with panfish is a bank a bass watches. It does little for pike, for muskie, for trout in fast, clear water. Those fish hunt with their eyes, and for them a lure is the right tool, and I will not pretend otherwise. Use the tool that matches the fish. The second is the law, and it matters. Some waters and some states put rules on bait, on chumming, on what may be introduced to the water, and the rules on grain-based baits vary from state to state and sometimes from lake to lake. In some places it is fully legal. In some places it is fine on private ponds only. In some trout waters it is prohibited outright. Look it up on your state wildlife agency page before you go. It takes about 4 minutes. And I would far rather you check and be certain than take my word and get a ticket. The third is a myth I want to put down, because it costs people money every year. You have been told that the scent on your hands ruins your bait, and that you need a special soap, or a special spray to hide it. Mostly, that is not so. Catfish and carp are not put off by clean skin. What genuinely does drive fish off a bait is strong stuff. Gasoline, insect repellent with DIT in it, sunscreen, heavy scented soap, tobacco. So the rule is not buy a product. The rule is wash your hands with plain water before you roll bait, and do not handle bug spray and then handle bait. That costs nothing and does the same job. And the fourth is that no bait fixes a bad spot. There is nothing in that tin that will save a man fishing dead water at the wrong hour in the wrong month. Bait is half of it. Where you put it is the other half. Now, why has nobody told you any of this? Think about who makes money when you believe fishing is complicated. A tin of cornmeal and eggs supports no industry. There is no margin in a bag of flour. There is no patent on a chicken. But a hard bait in a blister pack carries a fine markup. A soft plastic in 11 colors carries a better one. And a rod that costs $240 carries the best of all. And the whole business runs on one quiet piece of arithmetic, which is that lures get lost. That is not a defect. I do not believe anyone held a meeting about this. I want to be clear, because I have no use for that kind of thinking. It is something quieter than a conspiracy, and to my mind worse. It is that every single person who profits has no reason to raise the subject. The magazine does not raise it because the magazine sells its pages to the tackle company. The fellow on the television does not raise it because the tackle company pays him. The young man behind the counter does not raise it because he learned everything he knows from a catalog. Nobody has to coordinate anything at all. They only have to stay quiet. And they have stayed quiet for 60 years. We kept it because we had to. When there is nothing to spend, you learn what a cupboard will do. That knowledge did not survive in books. It survived in kitchens. There was an old man who fished the far bank of our lake when I was a boy, and he was there before daylight every morning of his life. And one summer I asked him why he never carried a tackle box like the other men. He thought on it a while. Then he said this. He said, "A lure is you asking the fish a question. Bait is you setting a table and waiting." He said, "A question can be ignored. Nobody ignores supper." And then he said the part I have carried since, which was, "Boy, anything that will feed a family will catch a fish, and anything that will not feed anybody was made to feed a company." I have thought about that most of my life, and I do not believe he was only talking about fishing. If any of that was worth your evening, do the 3 small things that help. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, turn the bell on. That is all of it, and it is what puts this in front of the next fellow standing in an aisle about to spend $9 on something he could roll in his own kitchen. So here is what I want you to do. Tonight, get out a bowl, 2 cups of cornmeal, 1 cup of flour, 2 spoonfuls of garlic powder, a spoonful of sugar, 4 eggs. Work it with your hands until it passes the thumb test. Roll 3 sizes, boil them 90 seconds, and pull them the moment they float. Dry them a full day on a towel. Put them in a tin. Then, the night before you go, soak a handful in a jar of water with a little more garlic and a little more sweet, and fish those. Then come back here and tell me in the comments what state you are in, what water you fished, what you flavored yours with, and what came up first. I read every one of them, and the reports folks send back are the reason I keep doing this. Come back next week as well, because the next one is what I get asked about more than anything I have ever put out. Next time I am going to show you how my grandfather built a worm bed behind the barn, out of an old pallet, a bag of coffee grounds, and one thing he took out of the kitchen scrap bucket that gave this family every worm it needed for 40 years without ever once buying a cup of them. It cost nothing to build. It fed itself. And once you see how simple it is, you will not walk into a bait shop again. Until then, keep your line wet, keep your hands clean, and remember that the people who fed their families off this water